Hi everyone, welcome to another XpoNorth digital short. This is one of my favorites because I love museums. I grew up going to museums, and today we have Amy and we have Nicola coming from two very different areas within the Heritage Museum Network. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you please explain a little bit before we dive in to also a new museum immersive network that you guys are developing? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, Nicola.
Hi, I'm Nicola Henderson. I am the Heritage Specialist working for XpoNorth, and I also work with Museums in Heritage Highlands, which is a network organisation, as their Digital Innovation and Network Manager.
It's a good title. Welcome. And Amy, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Amy Shakespeare and I'm the Innovation Manager at Cornwall Museums Partnership.
Fantastic. Okay, so I really wanted, both of you have a link to this word innovation and heritage and museums. I really want to go into that. Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about why you do what you do, about why museums are important, engagement with museums are important, and maybe a little bit about personally why you are passionate about this idea of innovation in museums?
Will I start?
Sure, go for it.
So I began working in museums back in about 2008, and I worked for a Highland museum, Timespan, which is in the far remote north of Scotland. In fact, Sutherland is the largest but least populated part of the whole of Europe. And we had big ambitions to be one of the leading museums and arts and heritage organisations in Scotland and the UK. And immediately I saw that digital and innovation gave us the potential to reach out and ensure that our programme could reach people right across the world. The Scottish diaspora has tentacles going out right across the globe. And I felt that technology and innovation gave us a real chance to do that. And I guess from my own personal point of view, my own journey into museums goes back to staying with my grandpa in Glasgow and in Partick back around about when I was 12, but right the way through, probably from about 10 to 15. But I think my memories seem to come alive around then. My mum used to pack us off for a week in the summer holidays. And every single year we would go to what people, locals would call the art galleries, better known to others as Kelvin Grove Museum, and the Transport Museum, which back in my youth were right across the road. And I used to love it. Every year I looked forward to it. We would go around. I loved going into looking at all the old paintings in the art galleries, and the fact that back then it was a real kind of hodgepodge. So you could be looking at Salvador Dali artwork one minute and then looking at a stuffed otter the next. But it was just so creative and so fun. And the building itself was inspiring. And as a teenager, I would go back, and I'm a musician as well. So I used to play in the orchestra and the wind band in that space. And it was a beautiful space that just, so it inspires the musicians, it inspires composers, it inspires writers, and that whole kind of multi-use of a space as well really got me loving museums and the building as a place that people come together.
That's wonderful. It lit your creative imagination, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. I used to love the Transport Museum. Was very different space, but like it had the Glasgow Recreation Street where you could go into the old sort of shops and the subway and the bar. And I used to love running about with my brother, just having fun, just playing and pretending. And yeah, it just, our work, our imaginations did the work for us, and it was fun.
Oh, Nicola, that's just wonderful. Thank you for that. I wish I could transport myself back in time and see what the Kelvin Grove looked like when I could see an otter and then a dolly. That sounds wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your relationship with museums, why you do what you do?
Yeah, I was sort of like Nicola, thinking back to when maybe my mom first realised I was a bit different and liked museums as a child. And I think I was probably about 9 or 10, and we went to a place called Whitley Court. I'm originally from the Midlands, even though I work in Cornwall now. And it's just like ruins. I think it burnt down at some stage. So we went through, and then they're like, oh, we'll have a picnic, and there's a fountain, watch the fountain. And then I was a bit bored and a bit restless, so I went round and did the entire audio tour by myself as like a child, just like so gripped, and absolutely loved it, and just could not stop talking about it on the way home. And I was like, Mom, you really should have done the audio tour, it was so much fun. And probably now, that was nearly 20 years ago, it probably wasn't like that innovative or anything like that, but I was totally immersed, and it brought this place that was just ruins kind of back to life through sound and through someone telling the stories. And I think for me, I just always had a love of history, so I was kind of looking for something that I could do that would help others explore history, and I wasn't really interested in the kind of academic side. I wanted to make it really accessible. But as I started working in museums and heritage, I realised that I was getting a little bit frustrated, perhaps, that there were other ways of telling stories using technology and innovation, and I really wanted to kind of push that as much as possible, which I'm fortunate enough to be able to do in my current role. So for me, it's just about telling the stories in different ways and making them as accessible as possible.
I mean, that's really wonderful, because it shows that, like, you've had a personal experience about the difference of engagement, how different it can be when you have not only storytelling, engaging people in the place that you're in, but maybe a little bit more of a multimedia experience for kids who either engage audibly or visually. Or that's awesome. I'm so happy you two are doing what you're doing and that you're in the roles that you're in. So tell me a little bit now about the Museum Immersive Network. What is that?
Shall I go, Nicola? So at Cornwall Museums Partnership, we're running a project called WAVE, which seeks to create 5 immersive experiences at museums in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. And we found that we were getting invited to different roundtables and conferences and discussions about the use of immersive technology within museums, but there wasn't really one place where those conversations were happening. And then I linked up with Nicola because she was starting to put together the programme for XpoNorth. And we sort of realised that there were a lot of synergies between working in Cornwall and working in the Highlands, and some of the sort of issues that we face being rural locations and having smaller museums were very similar. So it made sense to kind of partner on this network, which really just aims to share best practice and ideas and say that it's okay if you've not used immersive tech before, or if you're an immersive tech business and you want to engage. We want to encourage as much collaboration as possible to help museums realise the potential that this technology has for the sector.
Fantastic, and can't be better timed.
Yeah, especially kind of moving towards that no-touch museum that seems to be, ever present because of COVID. I think it's got some really interesting applications going forwards.
Not just in terms of the synergy of the challenges that you're dealing with. Have you guys, becoming a network, have you shared, you said best practices, have you learned from each other thus far?
I think we're still quite new at the moment. So when we launched with XpoNorth in June this year, obviously everything was online, but I think that format kind of suited the immersive network anyway, and it would have been a webinar regardless. So I think through that gave us an opportunity to really share lots of different examples of best practice in the webinar, which people can go and watch now on YouTube or through XpoNorth's Socio app, where they can see examples from people working right across the world, from Japan and Scotland and Cornwall. We had people from commercial world, so from Scotland we brought Lateral North, and we brought Timespan, who had done a whole huge digital exhibition that also brought a lot of their immersive experiences through that. So they got a chance to be able to profile their work, share their learning from that, and then also meet people from that commercial world, those immersive tech excuse me, businesses, and some academic partners as well, which I'm sure Amy can speak more about too.
Do you know, I know you guys are new, so sorry if some of these questions are maybe too fully formed, and you can always say pass. But in terms of the scale and the ambition of this, do you guys see this being global? Do you see it really, the strength of it being within the UK and tying the kind of museums within the UK together?
I think, like Nicola mentioned, we had some speakers from Time Lab in Japan on the first webinar, and what we weren't expecting was that we had a global spread of delegates to the webinar. And I found that since the webinar, just because it's my email address that's sort of been linked to everything, the amount of kind of Australian or American or Asian, just loads of different people getting in touch to say that they're either working on this or they're interested in this and they want to be involved. So it's been really nice because it feels like it's been global from the offset and we haven't had to push that. And at the same time, although there's different things happening all over the world, it's one area, both within the museum sector and within the tech sector, that the UK does actually do really well at and is leading on in many ways. So it's a nice chance to be able to showcase what's happening in the UK.
That's fantastic. So what are ways for museums, or even if I was running a little small museum and I just became aware of you, what are ways to engage with this network?
I think immediately people can get in touch and join. There's emails going out, but very soon we're going to be launching a podcast series, which we hope will cover a lot of really interesting topics from around immersive tech and different ways it can engage audiences, but also looking at women in tech, loneliness and isolation, accessibility, all the different potential that immersive tech can bring to a museum. So by getting involved, there's lots of ways they can contribute to that conversation as well, be part of it. And along past the podcast, we're looking at the next webinar to be in around January time too. And again, we're hoping that that will be a chance for people to share best practice, but also perhaps for there to be more panel-based conversation, so people could be part of a debate and look at the potential for that too.
That's fantastic. You know, I know just from my mom is a volunteer at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, so I know some of the challenges they're having at the moment because of COVID. From what you've heard, especially because your span is global, are there common themes that people are facing right now, given the pandemic, that are common challenges that you feel that your network can address?
Yeah, I think something that we're really interested in is the potential that immersive technology has at engaging people at home. So when they can't visit the museums themselves, how museums collections can still support them, like Nicola said, you know, to tackle loneliness and isolation that many people faced before lockdown, and all of us have kind of had a glimpse into because of lockdown. And that sort of accessibility element as well, you know, moving away from the traditional panels and text and looking at different ways that we can tell our stories, you know, for people with different needs, but also for people who speak different languages who can't necessarily read the English text. You know, there's lots of potential that the immersive technology has. And I think, as I've sort of previously mentioned, the no touch museum, the idea that, you know, we don't know how long this is going to last, and a lot of the older interactives involve a lot of touching and different people coming along, and with smaller museums in particular, you know, there's not the capacity to clean them after everyone's been. So some of the immersive technologies allow people to use their own phones, for example, to engage with augmented reality or something like that. So I think, as you said, it's sort of quite timely with everything that's going on in the world, and it could help to tackle. But like Nicola said, there are also problems with it and challenges that we want to kind of address through the network and the podcast, and have some discussions about how we might overcome those.
I just think about, when I think of immersive tech, a lot of people kind of presume that it's as a way to diversify your audiences younger and a way to bring people in, and it absolutely is, but also perhaps even highlighted more strongly through COVID, but from before, it's a real way for older people to engage with that heritage as well, who perhaps can't access the building for any reason in a physical way, that it can bring those experiences and access to heritage from your own home as well.
That's fantastic. And before we go, there's so much I would like to ask you, and I'm so sorry we're running out of time. But one of the things that's so exciting about the work you're doing, and I think it's worth highlighting, is going back to your personal stories about how important it is to diversify the types of engagement that museums are offering, because everyone learns differently and everyone engages differently, that these are going to be very valuable things, whether a pandemic is on or not. It increases everyone's audience regardless. And I think that's so exciting. So before we leave, beyond audio and beyond just an amazing website. I think you mentioned augmented reality. What are some immersive technologies that you guys are looking at?
So we've got, yeah, like you mentioned, augmented reality, which for anyone who doesn't know, it overlays something onto what you're looking at, maybe through a phone or a tablet. There's virtual reality, which is normally where you wear a headset and you're fully immersed, so you can't see the environment that you're actually in. There's mixed reality, so that's normally, again, you wear a headset, but you can see what's around you, and it overlays and you can interact with things. There's sort of voice immersive technology like chatbots and smart speakers and things like that, or there's binaural sound where you put it on headphones and you feel immersed just through audio. Have I missed anything?
Those are already, I think, a lot for people to ponder. That's great. That's so good. Well, guys, really quickly, before we have to leave, I would love for you to leave us with one little bit of advice. It can be anything from your past experiences, what you're learning now, but something that you've learned along the way that you think might be helpful.
I think in relation to immersive tech, all I would say is don't be gimmicky. Make sure that it fits with how you're telling the story. It can add so much, but it's not, don't use it for the sake of it. Just really think about how it brings the heritage to life and what the additional benefit is to using it. So yeah.
That's excellent. That's a really, really important. Make sure it's organic with what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think similarly, I would say don't start with the tech. Don't be kind of bowled over by virtual reality and think that that's the right fit for your business. Start with your user. So we use something called user-centered design and do a lot of community consultation to find out what their needs are and what they would actually use. And like Nicola said, you find that it's not just maybe the audience that you first thought of that will engage with this. You can be surprised by who might engage and the conversations that you might have through that consultation.
I think that's so important. And it's also recognizing what you have already. What's the identity of your place? Nicola, you talked about the importance of how the Kelvin Grove felt, that, and making the most of what you actually have. So guys, thank you so much for joining. It's such a pleasure. I think we should check back and see how the network's going in a little bit of time. It will be really interesting to see how it's grown, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much.
And for anyone wanting to be involved, we'll put some links in below so you know how to get in touch. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you.